Hello and welcome to a brand new show of India Reboot, and it gives me great pleasure on this show today to welcome Puneet Dalmia of Dalmia Bharat Group. Now it's a rare management. You'll rarely see him on television. So it gives me, so the zing in my voice is because this is one interaction I've been looking forward to. These are interesting times for all of us. One side, we are recovering from the aftermath of the COVID wave, and on the other side, there is a new dawn which is staring at us in terms of growth, recovery, and also where corporate balance sheets and demand is headed. Puneet, fantastic to have you back. Thank you for joining us. These are extraordinary times. Now we can look back and feel the pain because of COVID, or we can ignore the pain and talk about the bright future which lies ahead.
Thank you, Nikunj. It's really been a long time, and this COVID wave has really affected all of us. But thank God it's subsiding, and hopefully we are out of it. And I hope India will really truly achieve its potential in the coming years. So we are quite excited about it, and pray to God that the worst is behind us.
Last 3 quarters have been extraordinarily strong for commodity to stay.
So look, I mean, when the lockdown happened in March 2020, there was a lot of uncertainty. There was, labor migration, there was lockdown, and everybody was worried whether activity will continue or it will come to a grinding halt. But we saw a V-shaped recovery in construction, and it was surprising to us because, we never thought that India will bounce back so quickly. And we found that in rural areas, people were building extra rooms or they were building extra houses because they wanted social distancing. And थोड़ा rural India में ये हो गया था कि शहर की बीमारी है तो थोड़ा distance रखना better है, वहाँ पे land की कमी नहीं होती है. So people were building and we saw great demand. We also saw huge infrastructure demand. And I think, driven by these two factors, housing and infrastructure, I think the demand trends are strong and sustainable in India. I also think that the fact that the world wants an alternative to China to serve the global supply chain is going to drive a huge capex cycle in India, which is just starting right now. And this, along with the Atmanirbhar vision of the Honorable Prime Minister, India will have to build world-class infrastructure at a very rapid pace. So infrastructure and housing demand is here to stay. We see them as strong and sustainable demand drivers. And in the long term, we are extremely bullish on India. Nikunj, having said that, if you see in the last almost 75 years of independence, India has become the number 5 economy in the world already. And I'm sure in our lifetime, we will see India as the number 3 economy of the world. And if you look at the past, in 1500s, India's GDP was 25% of the world's GDP. Right now, it is still, even after becoming the 3rd largest economy, still under 10%. So there is huge headroom for growth. And we are very excited that there are long-term drivers which will drive demand growth in India as India participates in becoming one of the foremost economies in the world.
Now you publicly indicated that from being a regional player, you want to be a pan-India player. And if my numbers are right, you are looking at increasing your capacity from 30 million ton to 100 million ton. That's a large expansion which you are committing to. So how would you manage the 3 things, which is growth, capex, and capital allocation?
That's an excellent question. Our long-term vision is to be a pan-India pure-play cement company, having a capacity of around 110 to 130 million tons by 2031. Now, this seems like a very big number, but if you look at the annual CAGR, this is about 15% CAGR in capacity over the next 10 years. If I look at our growth in the last decade, it was around 11% CAGR, but it was uneven growth. So we saw 25% CAGR in the first 5 years, and then we saw 4% CAGR. So what we've thought is that we will create a more predictable and a more sustainable growth for our shareholders in the coming decade. We believe India can grow at 7-8% per annum. But as the capex cycle and infrastructure build out takes place, cement industry can grow 2 to 3 percentage points extra over the GDP growth. So cement could grow at around 9 to 10% potentially. And we think large players will take some market share away from small players, partly because they can rapidly expand organically and also some consolidation in the industry. So that's why we have set a target of 15% CAGR in capacity over the next decade. We also think that India has high headroom for growth. Currently, the per capita consumption of cement is 200 kilograms per capita compared to a global average of 500. So we think there is enough headroom for demand growth driven by infrastructure and housing. And to meet this 110 to 130 target by 2031, our immediate plan is to go to 36 million tons by March 22, 48.5 million tons by March 24. And then we are going to announce a 60 million ton plan by sometime around March 25 or 26. So we are putting some milestones in place to achieve this 15% CAGR. This we will achieve with a strong balance sheet, and we will not take our net debt to EBITDA above 2 times while pursuing this growth.
So allow me to put a very realistic concern, and the realistic concern is that cement at the end of the day is commodity. Now we all are feeling happy because cement prices and commodity prices are looking strong, but the reversal has been that what happened to commodity prices between 2015 to 2018-19. How can you be confident of cash flows when ultimately you are a commodity company?
No, you are absolutely right, Nikunj. And I think for this, we have thought of a planned organic growth. So most of this growth is going to come by organic expansion, which is easier to predict, which is also lower cost. And if there is a mismatch in cash flows, you can always pace the expansion by a few years. So I think most of this expansion is going to come in an organic way. However, we also believe in the consolidation story. And there are times when company will have a strong balance sheet to invest in inorganic growth and consolidate. For that, we have kept some space for acquisitions as well. But net debt to EBITDA is not going to go above 2, only except if there are very strategic, interesting inorganic opportunities available. And even in that case, if we breach it, we are going to bring it down back to 2 within a definitive time frame. So we have planned for good times as well as bad times. We have seen this in commodities, and we will pace our organic expansion if cash flows are not good. But we are going to keep the debt to EBITDA within a guiding rail that we have already defined.
Planning to differentiate yourself. Now there is Aditya Birla Group which is going for size and scale. There is Shree Cement which is going for cost and efficiency. They have the lowest power generation. Their innovation both in terms of changing their feedstock dependability is quite commendable. How will you differentiate?
So I think in this business, if you have to remain relevant, you need to have some scale. You can't be a marginal player and have pricing power in any market. So one of the guiding principles that we have set for ourselves is that we will be a sizable player in any market that we operate. And a sizable player means between 15 to 25% market share, at least. So only then you get pricing power, you can invest in distribution, and you can build a brand. So I think that is part one. Part two, I think in any commodity business, you have to go down on the cost curve. You have to be able to be the last man standing. We are investing very heavily on the cost side. And there are 3-pronged strategy that we have adopted to further reduce our costs by around 10 to 15%. So we are looking at reducing our power costs by investing in waste heat recovery systems and solar power. We are looking at substituting fossil fuel by alternate fuels like municipal waste, industrial waste, agricultural waste, etc. I think this will bring down our fuel cost and reduce dependency on fossil fuel. And we are going to invest in electric vehicles and mining equipment and distribution, which will again hedge us against diesel costs and oil costs increase. So I think we are following a strategy of reasonable scale in every market along with a lower cost curve. Having said this, I think the biggest differentiation for Dalmia is going to be sustainable and profitable growth. So we are going to be very, very responsible towards the environment. Our carbon footprint today is one of the lowest in the world. We are around 497 kilograms of CO2 per ton of cement. That's our carbon emission. This is around 15% lower than the India average, and it is around 25% lower than the global average. So I think we are going to continuously focus on bringing down our carbon footprint. In fact, we were the first company to announce that by 2040, we will be net carbon zero. We were the first cement company in the world to announce it. And we keep on reminding ourselves every quarter in terms of how we are making progress towards this. So by 2025, we will be close to 400 kilograms from instead of 497 today, which is a 20% reduction. And by 2030, we will go below 400. And then we are charting a path on how we can go to zero carbon by 2040. We have allocated 10% of our operating cash flows towards investing in developing and adopting green technologies and in innovative technologies. So I think that will also, we are watching the space. There are lots of innovation happening in the world, and we are going to be a very environment friendly company, even though we will grow in scale quite substantially in the next 10 years.
So let me take a leaf of that ESG point then. How are you planning to implement the ESG framework? Because that in a sense is now the most important benchmark for any entrepreneur in order to keep their commitment towards the ESG framework and also to enhance shareholder value.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, E is one part of ESG. So I think we are one of the greenest companies on the planet, and we are going to continue to come down the carbon curve. But I think absolutely right. On the social side also, I think we want to make sure that we have impact on the communities around our plants. We are already doing a lot of work in skill development, which ensures livelihood to people. We are also doing work in ensuring, green energy for them. So we are investing in, solar power plants, which can give energy, micro solar. We are also looking at how we can ensure that there is enough water availability. So we are looking at impacting communities in a way that their standard of living rises and their quality of living also improves. So I think on the social side, it's a very important area for us. On the governance side, of course, I think we want to build a world-class, governance, strong board, very strong culture in terms of, a young management team driven by a strong value system with a long-term focus on value creation. So I think all these three aspects are going to be very important in our strategy for long-term value creation.
So what happened to steel in terms of where the number of producers was small, unorganized player, big consolidation, some out of choice, some were forced by lenders? Do you see the same happening in cement? Because frankly, cement is still a regional player. A lot of small companies are regional in nature, but in today's environment, because they cannot scale up because of balance sheet or because of their positioning, do you think they could be up for block? Again, some forced and some by choice.
This is a great question, Nikunj. I mean, we are seeing this in all sectors. If you look at steel, there are 4 players now. I think insolvency and IBC code basically drove that consolidation. We are seeing that in telecom. We are seeing that in banking. But if you look at cement, India is still a continent. It's a regional play. There are many regions. If I look at the world, in most markets, 3 or 4 players control 85% of the capacity in any market. But if you look at India, the top 5 players control only about 57%. I think driven the fact that the big players will grow faster than the smaller players and driven by some M&A, this number could go up to 65%. So it is still not in the next decade. It is still not going to be as much as global markets where it has gone to 85%. But I think it will go to around 65%. However, I think some of the issues which can change this is how carbon pricing happens in the world. I think this is a new area, and I think people have to invest in product development. They have to invest in innovative technologies, and they also have to invest in capex to reduce their carbon footprint. So sometimes bigger companies have the muscle to do this faster and to do this quicker. If this happens, it could change the consolidation. It could accelerate consolidation even further.
Do you see, and again I'm doing that good old comparison of steel and cement, like in steel, a lot of steel companies are moving from B2B to B2C. It is a trying to create a brand around steel. In cement also that has been attempted before, but will the Dalmia Bharat Group be trying to attempt a commodity business which is B2B into some B2C or some branding?
That's an excellent question, Nikunj. India is a very unique market in the world. If you see in India, still around 65% of the cement is sold in the B2C space. And I never thought that in a commodity so much differentiation is possible. But we are seeing now that the difference between the largest, the highest, most premium brand and the lowest priced brand in most markets is almost around 15 to 20%. For a commodity business, 15 to 20% spread between the highest and lowest is a very big number. So we are already seeing it play out in many markets. And in fact, in some of the poorest markets in India, we see the brands have the strongest presence because the poor people have been cheated in India in the past. They've been supplied with poor quality cement or poor quality materials, and they want reassurance while building their house. And overall, in the total cost of the house, cement is only 10%. So even a 20% premium changes your cost of the project by only 2%. So demand is pretty price inelastic in this category. And yes, we are seeing that large players are developing brands and trying to get premiumization of their products. So it is happening. And India is a unique market where still almost 65 to 70% of the cement is still sold in bags, in 50-kilogram bags. It is still not sold as RMC or an industrial product, which is there in most economies. So yes, apart from cost and carbon, product premiumization is also a very important part of our strategy. And currently, I think out of the B2C total cement that we sell, 20% of our product is premium portfolio, premium products. And we expect to increase this to around 30 to 35% in the next few years.
Now, for an entrepreneur, 3 years is medium term and you need to have a 10-year vision. Looking at the proposed cement capacity in the next 3 years, which is what markets would focus on, investors would focus on, do you see demand outstripping supply? Because demand has suddenly come back and the supply and the new capacity addition could lag. It could be 12 to 18 months. Some delays have also happened because of COVID.
I don't think so. I think large players have announced capacity expansion plans. And given the cash flows and the pace at which people are deleveraging their balance sheet, more plans will get announced. I think overall the industry utilization is 70% approximately right now. And I think it will trend towards 80-85% in the next few years. But I don't think that we are going to have a cement shortage in India. I think large players have enough projects that they can bring to market fairly quickly. And I think people are going to put capacity ahead of the demand, coming back.
One of the biggest challenges for the cement sector is their dependence on raw material pricing in terms of volatility. Now, that's the nature of the business. The world is a different place now. Cycles are much more easier to understand. Innovation is always there. Do you see that changing in terms of a raw material dependability? Because a lot also has changed in terms of how auctions are also done, for example.
This is something we think about very deeply. And I think there is a lot of volatility in our cost structure, whether it is driven by coal or petroleum coke prices. Pet coke prices have almost doubled. If you look at diesel prices, again, same huge spike. So we are trying to see how much we can substitute. I think we are trying to get out of fossil fuels to the extent possible. But this requires some regulatory interventions. In many markets in the world, there is something called a polluter to pay principle. If you are creating pollution, you have to pay to dispose it off. In India, the Environment Ministry is still in the early stages of creating and enforcing these laws. Sometimes these laws were created, but they could not get enforced on the ground. But I think as India becomes more environmentally conscious, and as the Prime Minister drives this vision of a clean and green India and a prosperous India, I think these laws are going to come in, and that will shape further acceleration towards polluted away. So I think we are going to invest in creating flexibility in our manufacturing process, where we can consume all kinds of fuels, where we can consume multiple types of power, whether it is solar, whether it is wind, whether it is waste heat recovery or thermal power. So we are going to create a lot of flexibility in our process, but some of the volatility can be hedged not just by R&D and process flexibility, but also by shaping regulation. Like, for example, there is no captive solar policy in India. If I want to create a solar farm to serve our cement factory, that plant will generate energy only in the morning, but the cement plant will consume energy 24 hours a day. So we need a net banking facility where we can pump in extra energy in the grid in the morning and consume it at night. I think those kinds of laws are still evolving in India. And also we have to ensure that there is no cross-subsidy surcharge if it's a captive plant. So I think some of this volatility will get hedged only with regulation, but some of it will be hedged through R&D or investments in process flexibility. So I think we are getting there, and we are prepared for it. As and when whatever we can do now, we are doing. So, for example, our green power percentage is going up from 5 to around 30% in the next few years. Our fuel substitution is currently 9%. We want to take it to 25% in the next few years. And for these two initiatives alone, we are investing around 1,000 to 1,200 crores in the group. So partly, I think we can do it ourselves, but partly it has to be driven as and when the regulation is ready.
Okay, before we wrap, I'm going to take the clock back and talk about one of the first stories I did at the beginning of my career as a cub reporter, when I covered you as a tech entrepreneur. That is the Puneet Dalmia I met as a tech entrepreneur. Very few people actually know about it. Given what is happening in the startup world, what is your sense? You were one amongst the first to actually created a company and then sold it. Now, what you created is happening in terms of a large trend and a wave in the startup world now. I'm sure you track it.
I miss it too much, Nikunj. I mean, actually, I will tell you a personal story. I had proposed to my father a 500 crore capex in 1999. And this was a brownfield capex in our Tamil Nadu plant. And he told me that, who's going to do this capex? I told him, I'm going to do it. And he says, Puneet, I can't put 500 crores behind you. I asked him why. He says, you have no credibility. That's why. So I asked him, what do I have to do to earn credibility? So he gave me 2 crores and he says, do something with these 2 crores and then come back to me. That's when I quit the family business. And I did this jobs ahead with a friend of mine, Alok Mittal. So I think I really enjoyed that experience. It shaped me in many ways. The world could change dramatically overnight. Intense volatility, young team, you have to be customer obsessed. It was really good. I mean, very, very, stimulating, very innovative and very high energy world. And when I sold jobs ahead and came back to the family business, it was a totally different culture. Very stable, very efficiency focused, very engineering focused, not too much innovation. People wanted stability. So I think the scale was enormous, no doubt about it. But I think I really, really miss the startup world. I think it is a tribute to Indian entrepreneurs that I'm seeing. India always had enormous potential, but the people who had ideas in India had to go to US to actually, get the potential of those ideas. In my batch from IIT Delhi in 1995, almost the 90% of the batch went to US. But I'm really happy that India now is creating a startup ecosystem where people with ideas can thrive and create value. I mean, it is heartening to see stories like Zomato, where people from modest backgrounds, a son of a teacher, and can create so much value just because there was ideas, there was hard work, and there was passion. So I think it's a tribute to Indian entrepreneurship, what is happening in India. I'm super excited about it. I'm happy that people can stay in India, create innovation, and serve society. And this young generation of entrepreneurs will inspire hundreds of more people, who don't have access to opportunity. And I think this is what is going to take India to the number 3 economy in the world in the next decade. I think we have to just unshackle these people and give them opportunity, and India will be unstoppable. So I'm really delighted what's happening. I miss it, and hopefully I'm going to do something in this area in my private through my private investments in the family office.
What happened to that 500 crores finally? Did your father agree to give you 500 crores then after this tech exit?
Yes, after I came back, we got a lot of freedom, and they said, look, stay within a certain net debt to EBITDA. But we made a lot of changes in the company. I mean, we got KKR. We had never had anybody else on the cap table. We built a totally new management team. We built there were new board members that we got in. So even we created a new corporate structure. We created pure play companies, separate cement company, separate refractory company, separate sugar company. So I think we got a tremendous amount of support. The only guardrails that we were told is don't take too much debt and keep the strong value system of the family which you have inherited from generation. So I think we got tremendous support and tremendous freedom after that. And I think we took some risk which we were not used to taking. But given where India has gone, I think we have been very lucky and very blessed that we've had a good team and great support from the family to take this business forward.
Well, Puneet, fantastic to have you back on it, and certainly hope to see much more of you going forward.